if I get a, hey, this was great,
Yeah.
I feel like,
All right.
wow.
If you get a, hey, this is great, send me the recipe. So
There you
then
go.
we'll see what Ross has to say about it.
Good.
What do you like to cook? What are like some of your
I
go-tos?
really like casseroles. Like,
Oh, yeah.
so just whether
Casseroles
it's
are good.
like, so I'm doing a lot with bison right now
Uh-huh.
because it's a good, like, healthy red meat.
Mm-hmm.
So I do spinach and bison. Last night or 2 nights ago was bison, spinach, good Italian pasta as opposed to
Mm-hmm. Yep.
American pasta.
Yep.
Various cheeses, and then I put in a kind of a spicy sausage as well. That was the part that she wasn't all that crazy about.
Got it.
She's not great about spice, and so that was a little much. But otherwise, it was good.
That meal would be a 100% hit in my house. But Ross grew up on a cattle ranch in Montana.
Okay.
So his like number one food group is beef, bison, just red meat. And then, which was funny when I went during my cancer journey, when I went raw, I was just like eating my own little food over here. And then I didn't cook for my family for like 2 years during
Oh,
that
wow.
time because
Wow.
our diets were so radically different. But that meal would definitely be a hit for us. So I'm gonna try it.
Well, thank you for joining us today for another grand adventure on Sidewalk Conversations. And I am thrilled to have a guest with me today that I know you're going to thoroughly enjoy. In fact, I had an opportunity to sit in on an interview she did about a month ago that I found her to be authentic and fun and really insightful. So I'm sure you're going to appreciate our guest today. But before I introduce her to you, I want to say a thank you to the sponsors of our podcast today. The Van Ward Foundation. We have a foundation where there are people who regularly contribute. They are the kind of folks that like to stay behind the scenes. They don't necessarily want the attention, but they believe in the mission. But I want to say a public thank you to those who support the Van Ward Foundation. They are the ones that make this possible. So thank you. Today I have Carly with me. So Carly, thank you for joining me. If you are on Instagram, you can follow her at Carly Loves Kale.
That's right.
And we're going to get into that in a bit. But let me start at the beginning. Tell me a little bit about your growing up years, where you grew up, some of your key influences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I grew up on Long Island, New York.
Hey!
Yeah.
I grew up in Connecticut.
Wow.
On the other side of the Long Island
East
Sound.
Coaster, baby.
Yes.
There's a spirit. There's an energy about the Northeast, people from the Northeast.
I hear you.
I'm one of 4 kids. I'm the second child. I have an older brother, younger sister, younger brother. And I feel like it was pretty unique because my dad was a salesman. My dad worked full time, kind of very entrepreneurial spirit, salesman, was gone and traveling a lot, working to provide for the family. And then my mom was this nurturing, loving, stay-at-home mom of 4 kids.
Wow.
And so I really did, and I see it play out more and more as, I now have children and I have my own family, and I see how the balance of that really plays out in my personality a lot.
Because you kind of do both of those things.
Yeah, exactly. I straddle the line between both of them, and I love both of them. Like they're very, very much both a part of my personality and my why for being here. And I love both aspects. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I could go 100% in on business. Like I love this. And then I'm like, some days I'm like, oh, I could go 100% on mom life, homeschooling, living on the land, all that. And yeah, I mean, it was a really pretty typical upbringing, and we were loved, we were cared for, we were given space to dream. And my mom would say, like, you can create anything you want to create. And I think that spaciousness also gave me a lot of room to decide who and what I wanted to be in the world.
That's great.
Where other people were, whose parents were like, you have to do this, be this.
Yeah.
That was a gift that I was given, was like, what do you want to create?
That's
What do
awesome.
you want to build?
Yeah.
It's special. Yeah.
And so Connecticut to Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure there's a grand journey in there somewhere, but kind of what brought you this way?
Yeah. So when I went to college at Penn State, and
Okay.
the reason that I went to Penn
I
State.
also have a Pennsylvania connection.
Oh.
I served as a pastor in a place called Derry, which was right outside of
Okay.
Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And there is no natural beauty like the beauty of Pennsylvania, in my view.
Yeah,
Just
well, I was like
absolute-
right smack in the middle of the state, on a campus for 40,000, 18 to 22-year-olds. So it was a unique experience. But I went there because I really wanted the typical like university experience,
Okay.
like big school, football, of which I still don't really understand football. It's fine. I went to the game, still don't get it. Greek life. And after that, I moved out to San Diego. I was like,
Okay.
I want to get out to California. I want to get out to the beach.
I know this is going to sound really strange, but I have a San Diego connection too.
But of course.
My youngest son and his fiance live out there.
Really?
We love it.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's really, really spectacular. And so I
Now
moved-
we're in Texas together. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I know. We've just been on the same little trajectory around the U.S. for a while, for the last 20 years. When I was in San Diego, that was my first job out of college, where I worked for a personal development company. I worked for one of the speakers from the book The Secret, that was really
Oh,
talking
yeah,
about the
right.
law of attraction and how
Right.
to use your thoughts and your energy and your words to create the reality you desire. And that was, he has passed on, rest in peace, James. And he was one of the biggest influences in my life. I was 23 years old and really sitting in the back of these rooms that people paid anywhere between $2,000 to $10,000 to be a part of, to learn how to change the circumstances of their life. And
Wow.
so that was a really transformational time of my life. At that point, the book Eat, Pray, Love came out,
Right, yeah.
India, Bali, Italy, and I decided to go on my own Eat, Pray, Love adventure.
Really?
Yep.
How fun.
I was just like, I'm gonna go do this. I did Italy. No, I did India first, and then became an au pair in Italy.
Wow.
And it was while I was traveling that I actually heard about Austin. I heard that it was just a very kind of entrepreneurial, health conscious, kind of forward thinking place.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't really have any plans after I traveled. So I was like, at that point I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I thought, why don't I go there? So I came to Austin in 2011.
Okay.
Yeah, 2011.
Wow.
I moved here. Mm-hmm.
And did you pick up a husband along the way? Or?
I picked up a husband 2 years later. So
Okay.
he moved here exactly a year after me. He moved in 2012 to move from
Because
Montana.
that would have been fun if it was in Italy.
Yeah,
that you
no.
found him and brought him over.
No. He's my Montana mountain man.
Okay.
He moved to Austin in 2012 to play the fiddle professionally.
Okay.
So he's an incredible fiddle player, and he moved here to like be part of a Texas band and do the tour bus thing. And we met here.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this idea of personal development is something that's kind of really been a common thread, because
Mm-hmm.
you now have all these ventures that are related to health and fitness. Talk to me a little bit about how that got started.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like I said, when I started learning about personal growth at 23, it changed my entire mindset. And I definitely attribute a lot of what I'm doing now, from, running an online business to running an offline raw organic cold pressed juice company, to what I learned at that point. I mean, both of the businesses that I have right now are directly because of the cancer journey that I went through. And I can go into that in a little bit, but without a shadow of a doubt, my mom encouraging me from a young age, seeing my dad's entrepreneurial spirit, being a part of the personal development world at age 23 shifted my mindset so that I knew I was capable of building what I desired. And in my businesses today, a lot of what I do is work on people's mindset, because I can give them every tool to build a profitable, beautiful online business, but most of the time people are in their own way because of the conditioning that they've received for years or decades prior.
Right.
So building a business it's not actually that hard. You have the steps that you follow. It's getting out of our own way to be willing to take the steps to follow.
Right.
So yeah, it sort of just has, the personal development world and what I learned at a young age is woven into every aspect of my life now.
Wow. So when I had a chance to hear you do this interview that I think is becoming part of a documentary a couple of weeks ago, what was interesting to me was that you started talking about, like, I was already living in this space where you were thinking about being healthy and having a good mindset, and then all of a sudden you're interrupted with this cancer diagnosis, which kind of threw everything upside down, of course. So talk a little bit about like that discovery and then what that led to.
Yeah, for sure. I have to take a sip of water. I'm 21 weeks pregnant and like I'm out of breath doing everything right now. So when I moved to Austin, I went to school to become a holistic health coach. I knew that one of the things that I wanted to do was help people live better, healthier, more embodied lives. So the first thing I did that was become a health coach. I started working with people one-on-one. I created some online courses. And then over time, after I met my husband, Ross, we started a digital marketing company. I became a yoga teacher. I started doing yoga retreats, just like kind of in my 20s, dabbling in all of these different things. And I was already living this healthy life, eating organic, practicing yoga, meditation. So in 2019, when our first son, Cruz, was 8 months old, when I was 4 months postpartum, I got a massage and she found a lump on my neck. And she said, "Hey, just so you know, you have a lump on your neck." And I was like, "Oh, it's fine. It's probably nothing. I'm just postpartum. I'll keep an eye on it." And we were actually living down in Mexico at the time.
Wow.
So we just like to have a lot going on at all
yes,
times.
You do.
Clearly. And I was like, we're living in Mexico. I'm postpartum. Like, it's not a big deal. I was not worried about it at all. But over the next 3-4 months, I noticed that it continued to grow and I wasn't feeling that great. And I said, "Ross, we have this baby and I'm not feeling great. And I've got this lump on my neck. We don't know exactly what's going on. Let's go home. Let's go back to Austin and just ground for a little bit." And when we got back here, I got an ultrasound done. And again, I wasn't thinking anything. I was not even scared going to get the ultrasound. I was just kind of going through the routine. And I got it back and it was like, all the red. It could be lymphoma. It was like it could be 6 types of cancer. And one of them was thyroid cancer, metastatic thyroid cancer. And essentially with thyroid cancer, they send you to a thyroid practitioner. And she did her own ultrasound and said, it looks like it's metastatic thyroid cancer, but we need to do a biopsy and I'll call you in 2 days. And even then there was shock and overwhelm, but I was like, it still can't be cancer. Like, not me.
Yeah, right.
Not me. At that point I was 33, new baby, eating organic, taking care of my body. Yeah. I was like, I don't get cancer, And I think that's maybe a common experience for people.
Yes.
And she called me 2 days later. It was 9 a.m. If you're the one that hears from the doctor in the morning, it's not usually a good thing.
Right.
And that was when it set in that was really what was happening. And I knew my life was going to change and I didn't know how. There was the moment of, will I be here to see my son? Will I be here to watch him grow up? And the way that I can describe it was like there was the initial devastation, like take my breath away, knocked out. And maybe 5 minutes later, after I sat with it, just 5 minutes alone in my kitchen with my baby eating breakfast, I was like, this won't be the story that I tell. I will tell a story of healing and I will tell a story of victory. And I will be the one who shows how we can heal and restore the body back to the way that it's designed. Because I was eating well and I was moving and I was taking care of my mindset. How do I get cancer? And so I really got curious of like, oh, there's a piece of the puzzle that I'm missing here.
Yeah.
And I got really curious about finding out what that puzzle piece was so that I could go to the root cause and heal it. And that's where kind of the trajectory of my life did change, because I went very, very deep into a 2-3 year season of extreme healing.
Yeah, I love that. And part of that journey took you to Hope for Cancer.
Yep.
And that we also have now as a common thread.
That's right. We were destined to know each other.
Yes, apparently. Okay, so I know there's probably so much in this, but could you just take a bit of time to talk through what were some of the major discoveries that you made in this journey of researching, okay, I have these other pieces that I've figured out, I've tried to be faithful to them, but there's this missing piece. How would you categorize that? What was some of the key lessons that you learned, and how would you describe that to our audience?
Yeah. So the first really obvious one that jumps out to me is, so when I was first diagnosed, it was recommended immediate surgery, like you need to get into surgery next week, radiation treatment, hormone replacement the rest of my life. And it was November 2019, and I didn't have insurance. So I essentially said, I have to put off, and they're very adamant you need to get into surgery immediately. But I said, I don't have insurance, so I have to wait until January 1st to apply for insurance and be able to cover this surgery. So I kind of got her off my back a little bit and bought myself some time. And in that window, I started researching integrative cancer therapies. I went on my Instagram, said, does anybody know? I was just diagnosed with thyroid cancer. Who has tools or resources? And I started learning about people like Chris Beat Cancer, and juicing and raw foods and red light therapies. And I was just kind of like Googling and hearing from people. Like I just kind of opened myself up to say, if one was going to heal cancer in a holistic way, how would one go about doing that?
Yeah.
And I started driving all over Austin, going to different practitioners and therapists and getting IVs and things like that. And I thought, gosh, this is exhausting. I was gone hours a day, and it was a lot on me. And at that point, one of my mom's friends called and said, hey, I just got back from a clinic in Florida that takes all of these integrative therapies that Carly's doing and does them under one roof with a doctor who oversees. And that was all we needed to be like, we're going. And these things are very expensive. I did not have the money in my bank account. I think we were genuinely making like $2,000 a month, like enough to get by and live. So I did a GoFundMe. And I was able to raise enough money to get to that clinic. And the biggest discovery that came out of that was I sat down with the doctor, which, by the way, I don't recommend this clinic. I haven't gone back there again. I'm going to tell you why, and why Hope for Cancer is my healing home. But I sat down with the doctor that first day, and he essentially said, tell me your story. And I was like, from when? He's like, from the beginning. I was like, okay. So one part of my story was that my freshman year of college at Penn State, I was at a frat house and I slipped on beer. This is like the craziest story. I had heels on and I slipped on beer on the floor because people had been playing beer pong. And I fell where it was like my knees, then my chest, and then my face hit last. And I knocked out my 2 front teeth, and I broke the upper bone in my mouth. And he was like, that's it. And I was like, what do you mean that's it? He was like, I can pretty much guarantee that you have a dental infection that shut off the immune system enough that cancer was able to thrive, in addition to the amount of surgeries you've had, the amount of x-rays you've had doing work on your mouth for the last 10 years. And there's a direct correlation between dental infections and cancer of the head and neck. So he sent me to a biological dentist, and I got something called a 3D cone beam scan, and it was black with infection. It was I had infection all throughout my mouth. In addition to the place where my wisdom teeth had been removed, there was infection in there as well.
Wow.
And the dentist said to me, he literally said, you're lucky it's cancer. The bones of your mouth could have fallen apart. Like it was that bad. So during the 7 weeks that I was at that clinic in Florida, I had 3 separate dental surgeries done to remove the infection in my mouth. There were 2 weeks where my mouth was sewn shut. I couldn't talk. I couldn't laugh. I couldn't smile. And it was actually during that time that I spent a lot of time with God. I was in pretty rough state.
Sounds like it.
You know,
Yeah,
I
for
was going
sure.
to the clinic during the day. I was recovering from these surgeries. My mouth was sewn shut, and I would go to the clinic from about 7 to 3, and then I would come back and I would just journal and rest and meditate and talk to God. And I did that for like 2 or 3 weeks every single day. Wow. And a lot of emotional healing happened during that time.
So interconnected, isn't it?
Yes. So when you ask me, like, what do you feel are the biggest things? It would be the dental work for sure. I say, like, once I removed the dental infection, I turned the faucet off, right? So once I turned the faucet off, I could actually get to the root cause healing. The emotional work, being willing to sit with myself long enough to be quiet, to rebuild my relationship with God, to get out of the way, to surrender and just say, your will is my will, regardless of what that looks like. I'd really gotten to that place of like hands off the wheel, surrender. And what happened when I left that clinic was...
And before you move too far on from that,
please.
I just want to kind of put a punctuation mark
Yeah.
right there, because I feel like this is one of the things I've experienced over and over, and many of the guests who have talked about with this kind of thing, is it seems to me that is one of the ways that God redeems the hardship, is that he creates space within the hardship to all of a sudden do a new kind of business with him. Now, I don't think he causes those kinds of experiences, but it is part of how he uses the experience to bring about a healing in our hearts that is as instrumental as whatever is going on with us physically. Yeah,
100%. And I think it's also the gifts in the darkness. You know, so many people, as humanity, right? We don't want to go through hard things.
No,
we don't want to go through the darkness. We want to live in the light, in the joy, in the play. But the truth of the matter is that if you talk to people and you ask where the greatest transformations in their lives happened, it happened in the depths of the darkness.
Yes.
You know, and I can very much say that that's the same for me, because that building that relationship with God, coming back home to myself, to my faith, being willing to surrender, also has changed the trajectory of my life. And now I walk with God in every aspect of my life, which I wasn't doing beforehand.
Yeah, awesome.
And so when I left that clinic, I had some progress. Obviously, we got rid of the infection. But when I got home, I got an ultrasound and I sent it to the clinic and said, hey, would you mind looking at this for me? And they said, you're no longer a patient. And if you want us to look at this, you have to pay $7,000 to come back for a week for us to look at this scan. And I was just like, I was so upset. I was so angry. I was like, come on. I just spent all, you know, it's ridiculous. So I was like, I want someone who's on my team. Like I want my people. And it was right around that time that I learned about Hope for Cancer.
Okay.
And one of the things about them is that they follow you for a year. Like you go for your 3-week stay, you go back again for a follow-up, and then a doctor from their team calls you once a month for a year to check in on you. And that was really nourishing to me. Mm-hmm. And the third pillar, so there was the dental, there was the emotional work and faith, and then the third one that I would say is cellular detoxification. And that was the depths of what we do at Hope for Cancer, where the way that I would explain it is like restoring the body to the way that God designed, the way that we came in. The reset, exactly. Yeah. So we're doing coffee enemas, colonics, red light therapy, heat therapy. We're doing the emotional work. We're eating the alkaline food, the juicing, all of the things. And I think the healing that comes from having a doctor come sit beside you and look you in the eye and say, how are you doing today?
Yeah.
How are you feeling? Tell me. Yeah. I'm like, thank you. You know, and what we were talking about, the community too.
Well, and I have to say that, you know, I saw on their advertising, and I talked with their intake specialist, who's now also a dear friend, about the whole dynamic of, you know, we do holistic, and you hear that word a lot. And they said, you know, we have a spiritual component, we have an emotional component, and what you eat, and of course the therapies. And I'm like, yeah. And then the first thing you get there, all right, so the receptionist comes to the door and gives you a hug and says, welcome to Hope for Cancer. And this stark difference between that and my experience of going to a urology office, and I have a great urology team, but I can tell you the receptionist did not hug me at the door.
No kidding.
Where's your insurance information, young man? And so that whole dynamic, and then you go into a worship service, and then you have the people that you talk to, like that you said, that actually take the time to sit with you for more than your 5-10 minutes in the office. It was such a profound experience, and then the relationships, as we talked before we even got on the air, are just so still an integral part of my life. All right, let me roll forward. Now you are quite active on social media. You have an Instagram account called Carly Loves Kale. Where did that name come from, first of all?
Well, the funny thing is that Instagram name is like 9 years old. I started it when I was a health coach.
Oh,
that was
okay.
it. When I started my health coaching business, I made
Gotcha.
Carly Loves Kale. Not knowing that fast forward many years, I was going to have an organic juice company, which is just, that's how God works.
Yes, yes. So now you are giving encouragement and receiving encouragement on that platform. What are some of the things that you find yourself talking about regularly there?
Mindset and detoxification, for sure. Without a doubt, those are the two big ones. People wanted to know, like, what kind of red light and how long do I do red light and what's a coffee enema and how do I do a coffee enema? What's lymphatic drainage? How do I do it? So I spend a lot of time just really talking and teaching about practices.
Is that where you do your dance as well?
Yes. Dance is one of my therapies because it's embodiment of joy and play and self-expression. So
when you said that in the interview that I was watching, I said, "Oh, I have to go check it out." And you really do dance on your Instagram.
I do. I love to dance. When I started dancing was the first morning I went to Hope for Cancer.
Really?
The first time I was like, okay, I'm here. I'm alone. I had 3 weeks. I was away from my baby and my husband. And I thought, I'm about to go do some serious healing work. How do I get myself into a peak energetic state so my body's able to receive the therapies? And I thought I should dance. And I don't know why, but I just turned my phone on and danced and talked about how I was embodying joy and opening my cells for healing. And it struck a chord with people, and it felt really good for me. And so it's really become, I've always loved to dance. Like I'm at a wedding, I'm the first one on the dance floor. So it kind of makes sense too.
Okay. Now you also, you've actually also combined some of the modern technology with your holistic approach. And I think, at least for me, that's been kind of one of the challenges in the healing journey, is that you sometimes talk to the people who are in the quote unquote modern medicine space, and they have such distrust for the people who are more integrative and holistic. And conversely, the other camp often looks at, well, they're going to waste your money and they're going to poison your body. But you've kind of taken an approach where you've included both. How have you navigated those decisions for yourself?
Right. So through my work at Hope for Cancer and all of the nutrition and the mindset and the detox and the many things that I did for 2.5 years, I had an 80% reduction in the amount of cancer in my body. And so essentially I got to a place with Hope for Cancer where I was like in maintenance. And it was on my heart to have another baby. I had my first son, Cruz, and I really wanted to have another pregnancy. And when I was pregnant with my second son, Cash, there was some progression of the cancer, which I knew was a risk because when you're pregnant, you have to stop your therapies and things just change. You can't be doing major detoxification. So when he was 4 months old, I called my surgeon and I said, okay, I'm ready. And I decided that it was my time to go in and have my thyroid removed. And the thing about that was that I did it in my way, in my time, without being guilted or forced or manipulated, which I think is actually a very common occurrence for people.
Yes, unfortunately.
I can't tell you the amount of people on Instagram or social media who have reached out and said, I wish I would have just taken a pause.
Yeah.
When a diagnosis comes, we're just rushed and we're in fear. And so we want to trust these experts, but the medical conventional experts can only see it from one lens. The surgeon knows surgery, right? So what I feel really grateful for is that I took that 2.5 years to do the cellular healing so that when my time came and said, yes, I'm ready for surgery, I went in there with an incredibly strong immune system, an incredibly strong spirit. And I have a video of me in the hospital gown dancing before I went into surgery. And
Of course.
And that was how I was able to do it, because I did it on my terms and I did it on my timeline. And my recovery was so smooth. One of the biggest things that I've heard about having your thyroid removed, I had my thyroid and 30 lymph nodes removed, was, and the reason I was so fearful of doing it originally was because I heard from people I never felt like myself again. And that was terrifying for me because I have this fire in the spirit that I didn't want to lose.
Of course.
And, well, I didn't lose it.
I can tell.
I didn't lose it. And I feel more myself, more embodied, more on purpose, more aligned than I ever have. And it didn't have to do so much with the what, but it had to do with the how, which was slowing down enough to say, how do I want to go about this healing journey?
Yeah. I love that because it just reinforces this idea of agency. You know, it really is your choice. So we were talking before we got on the air about this support group that I'm helping to lead. And one of the things we keep coming back to is, no, seriously, it's your choice. What you want to do, how do you want to live? What are the important values that you want to use as markers for how to make decisions? And that is so crucial. And I love the way that you just expressed that and modeled it.
Yeah, thank you. And it's interesting because another question that I get a lot online is, how do I get my loved one, my parent, my spouse, to see it through this lens? How do I get them to do integrative or to do a coffee enema or a colonic? And I'm normally like, you can't. You know, what we can do is say, hey, here's a book to read that I think might be really helpful, or here's a link to Hope for Cancer if you want to check it out. But at the end of the day, I think that the greatest thing that we can do is honor people's desires when it comes to their health, their healing, and how they want to go about this.
So true.
You know, because I even had people in my family who reached out in the beginning and said, what are you doing? Listen to the doctor. Do what they say. And they were so scared for me. And I said, the greatest way you can love me right now is just to support my decisions, because I'm the one who has to sit with this. Yes. You know, this is my life. And they eventually heard that. And I think it's on either side of the coin, just supporting your loved ones. That's loving them is the best thing that you can do.
Because you don't want to add to the pressure. I mean,
exactly.
So good. All right, I want to give you an opportunity to close out our time together with, if you had to summarize your life message as it is right now, and all that you're doing and all that you've experienced, what is it that you're really trying to say?
What I really want to say is that every single person came into this world with a unique gift, a unique light, and that we need that from you. We need people who are turned on and fully embodied in who they are, using their voice, shining their light. What is the quote from Marianne Williamson? It says, it's like your light, but not your darkness that you fear most. So permission, it's like I would want everybody just to have permission to be as bright and big and bold and expressed as possible, because the world will be set free by people who are free. And
I love that.
Yeah. And I think we live in a society that's like, do this, look at this, put you in a box, put a label on you. And it's like, I just want this from everyone. Like, just like dance in the glory of God, the way that we came into this world, shine bright, and permission to shine bright.
Boom!
That's it.
This has been so fun. Thank you so much for joining me. I know you have such a busy schedule, and I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute delight.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
And thank you for joining us. Join us again at our next Sidewalk conversation. Bless you, and keep the faith.